Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Ninja Warrior podcast. Tonight, we're going to be covering the ANW 17 finale. Finally, get to end our coverage of ANW 17, covering a pretty bad episode. Dude, we have 2 episodes to cover. Well, 2 pretty bad episodes, John. That's what we're talking about here today. Did you hate the finale that much? Kinda. There wasn't really many things I actually liked about this finale, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, that's a huge preference here. When was the last time we actually hated an AEW finale? That's the first thing I'm questioning this one, because this is the first time we're coming into a finale. We're let's get this over with. I mean, season 15 we kind of had that attitude too, but I don't know. I don't think we really hated season 15. It only really felt that way because of the format and how radical it really felt at the time. But actually hating a finale, I feel the last time I actually hated a finale was season 10. Yeah, I do think it's a pretty low bar, yeah. Because, at least, most seasons, the finale is at least entertaining. Yeah, I would actually argue this is the worst finale since, I don't know, maybe the first season of ANW? I don't think that finale was really all that good. That season wasn't really all that good, first off. But just, in general, in terms of, feeling climactic and actually feeling the culmination of everything, yeah, this really is, the first finale that ain't... in a while, this really is the first finale that really didn't feel like a finale, and really wasn't even an entertaining episode on a basic level. And I guess I guess that's not giving it enough credit, right? Well, define basic in this case, and then I'll find a verdict for you. Well, the thing is because ANW has always had the same format aside from seasons 15 and 16, I think that's why every finale has had the same kind of standard. So, because of that, it's kind of hard to actually judge the finale of a season. Yeah, but even then, ANW 2 and 3, I think they have pretty good finales. It's just, this that really, I don't know, grinds my gears. I don't know. Yeah, so today we're going to be covering episodes 12 and 13 of ANW 17, the final 2 episodes. Starting off with the final 3 groupings for the basic grouping, and then talking about the final 32 and all the stuff talking about that. But... first off, I want to start talking about our preliminary discussion for this episode, which is generally going to be talking about, which is a interesting idea, I will say. It definitely crosses into some very interesting fanfiction territory, and a lot of you guys may not actually be too into this idea, but a lot of you guys might actually be really into this idea, just in general. So, the 3 of us were discussing and talking when we met up for the last podcast episode, and we had came up with 2 topics that we really wanted to do a preliminary discussion on. Now, originally we were going to do both in one, but last episode of preliminary discussion lasted a grand total of 15 to 20 minutes. Right? Wasn't it longer than that, though? I mean, we haven't edited that episode yet, but, it will... I remember that preliminary discussion feeling a lot longer. I know we spent a long time talking about it, and then we spent a long time talking about the obstacles. So, yeah, I mean, we spent 30 minutes just going over everything before we even got into the episodes themselves. So, yeah, I think it kind of depends how you look at it. Oh yeah, definitely. So, but anyway, the idea we ended up coming up with was not only talk about the show's format, but talk about just how the show could be better with it. And, we kind of came up with the ideas, what if, similar to actual Las Vegas finals, everything was single elimination from the beginning, and we didn't have to deal with this zigzaggy grouping, and it was more about individual races and matchups, making it actually feel like the other competitor actually mattered to a certain degree, especially during the 6-obstacle version of these courses instead of the 10-obstacle. This led to us popping all 60 competitors who got into the finals into a bracket generator, and David popping them into a 60-person tournament bracket single elimination. Yeah, I'll of course show a visual of this so you guys can see what we ended up coming up with. We randomly put everyone in a specific spot, so nothing was actually influenced in terms of who's facing who. I kind of just want to explain why this idea works a lot better. Would work a lot better, at least in my opinion. And we could do a little bit of internal debating as well, because this is a discussion, obviously. But, here's the thing. So, as the show depicts this, it's a round-robin style tournament, and all the groupings were kind of made so that way you can pick the competitors to root for with inside the groups. And, but unfortunately, the way the show aired it, as we discussed last week, made it very difficult to follow each group. Here, it just eliminates that. Here, this kind of just eliminates that entirely and just allows each episode to focus on a single, it's two groups of competitors. It is where each group, as we mentioned previously, would get their own time to shine, and each episode would end up setting up the first and second half of the top 8 for the season, with the final episode actually us seeing the final top 8 matchups. I guess it might be top 16 as well, right? Possibly. I don't really know, like, what would be, like, the setup, because, you know, ANW is fast forward, so, like, I think that it would definitely decide some things. But in general, yeah, this is a lot more straightforward. It being single elimination also kind of just makes it so that Vegas is not as that you know, there's no second chances, and that's more like the Vegas of yesteryear. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely still, like, safety passes and stuff in terms of, like, previous years of Vegas, but, like, this makes, I do say this makes it feel like a more core Vegas, like this is like an ANW spin-off show or something, where they really went all in on the racing. And that would have been totally fine if this was a spin-off. Yeah, I don't remember if I've mentioned this on the channel before, but when I first saw Ninja vs. Ninja, I thought this would be the kind of tournament that would be, where they took off the Team Ninja aspect, because we are no longer talking about teams, we are talking about the individual ninjas going head-to-head. Well, in that show's case, it was because of branding, and it was just Team Ninja Warrior Season 3, but in my case, I thought, just take it down to the individual competitors going head-to-head. And that would have been really interesting. That's what this, honestly, if this was the actual finals, that's what this would feel like, if I'm being honest. Yeah, definitely. I mean, this also would lead to a lot of very tight matchups. Something that we can definitely start to talk about when it came down to the top 32, because I will admit that was the best part of this episode, seeing people keep on getting eliminated, and, like, the people we actually kind of wanted to win to a certain degree at this point, you know, we kept on losing those people, and starting to see people's seasons actually end. Like, once we got to the top 32, it really did feel like it meant something, at least in my opinion. That's when the finals actually felt like real. Like, I would personally kind of just, like, want to skip episodes 10 and 11, because they're scattered. They're so scattered, it's tough to follow, and it barely really feels like it means anything in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, I mean, I get why they set up the season the way it is. We've neglected to mention the fact that the top 4 in this case would actually ignore the first matchup and instead just move on to the second immediately, due to 60 being, yes, an odd number. Yes, being an even number, but also not allowing for an even amount of matchups to actually come up to a tournament bracket. I think if this was like 64, it would make a lot of sense. It would actually do that. But I also want to preference this by saying as well, if we had a 4th semifinal, like we kind of should have, this probably would not be an issue. Yeah, I mean, this is, like, if you want to go off that tangent, like, this is the least amount of competitors we've ever had compete in Las Vegas. Ever. Like, in the national finals, ever. Because, like, I think the least we've had was, like, 85 in ANW 8 or something like that. I don't know when we had 85, but it was, like, what season was that? I think it was ANW 6 you were calling that we had 85. I think it was ANW 6. I think it was ANW 11 that had 85. Oh, yeah, because the top 12 rule. Yeah, you're right. But, yeah, so, yeah, we've never had any less than 85 competitors compete on Las Vegas in the grand finals. Now that we see 60, we see this odd number. And you kind of start to see a little bit why they did what they did, but at the same time, no. Because it's pretty cool they did that for thematic purposes. But I also still feel like this would have been more worth it to see. Just seeing competitors go head-to-head and it being all or nothing from the start, you know? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of amateur ninjas who did end up moving on, so seeing them actually face against individual competitors would have been so cool to see, in general. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so with that in mind, let's hop into the final three remaining groups. Oops, that was shown in episode 12. These are groups 10, 11, and 14. Group 10 went on course 1. Groups 11 and 14 went on course 2. Went on course 2. Do you guys have a preference in terms of how we're going to cover this? I mean, not really. I don't think they're really all that notable, but there's some good competitors in here, I'll give you that. Yeah, starting off with Group 10, the only group on Course 1 this episode, we had Caden Forsha, Colton Scuster, Max Feinberg, and Kyle Soderman. I think Caden Forsha was definitely the standout here, but even so, like, all four of these people are top veterans for the most part. So there was a lot of competition here. I would also argue that all four of them were pretty even. I think we might have even said this last episode. But yeah, they were pretty even with each other, and it produced a lot of interesting matchups because of just how even these competitors really were. Yeah, Forshaw was the standout, getting a 3-0 win ratio, moving on in first place. And then we had Max Feinberg moving on with a 2-1 win ratio. And Kyle Soderman and Colton Scuster getting eliminated. I don't think there was really a specific matchup that stood out of this group, but I think it is cool to see Forsha. I think it's always cool to see Forsha. Yeah, considering how his season ends up ending a little later, definitely for sure Forsha is definitely someone definitely someone exciting to see for sure. Okay, well, I think with that we can move on to Group 11 on Course 2. This group is probably the least notable out of 3. Or is actually even out of, like, the 15 we had a couple of in terms of this time last time. We had Dalen Perez, Noah Munoz, Spencer Johnson, and Emil Malik. Yeah, it was just... Yeah, I mean, Noah Munoz was obviously going to be the one dominating in this group. But aside from that, like, who do you guys even think was going to win out of this? I mean, I will give you this. I will give you this. Out of those three, Malik was the veteran going into this. So I guess, and he had, some wasting experience. So I think he definitely had the edge in terms of just statistics actually pushing him to win. But honestly, I don't think anyone really cared. As long as Noah Munoz moved on. Yeah, speaking of Noah Munoz, I need to go into how, like, they fucking ham-fisted that fucking fake record I debunked about him last time. Yeah, I mean, maybe not as detailed as last time, because you kind of already preferenced, like, the actual numbers to that. No, I wasn't planning on going that way. I was just the fact that they really did ham-fist it. Oh, yeah, fuck yeah. So, they kind of acted like Caden Lebsek also had this record, and by the show's definition, yes, he did, as he timed down on stage 4 twice. It had, technically speaking, a streak of obstacles, apparently 99, going into stage 2, where he fell on the Epic Air Surfer in season 15. I wouldn't personally call this much of a streak. Like, he failed on stage 4 twice, and especially back then, it felt like a stretch to call this much of a record. I will also say before this that, like, the circumstances never really allowed for this kind of discrepancy to really happen, to where a record like this was even allowed, because people weren't getting to stage 4, and more so people weren't timing out on stage 4. But, like, think about it this way. We weren't given Daniel Gill a ginormous streak of so many obstacles up till when he failed the falling shelves on stage 2, let's say. Like, that is a huge stretch of, like, I think, like, 4 or so seasons where he went so long without hitting the water, as the show talks about. And I think actually that might have even been a higher number of obstacles, even if you really want to count it. I'm not counting it right now, but I'm just saying, as I'm thinking about this right now, that's a good example of something the show doesn't count as much. Yeah, and yeah, they kind of do push that aside a little bit. Maybe, like, we can go back and count it and I can put, like, a number on the screen. But, like, that's definitely something that, like, is notable for sure. When it comes to the record. Yeah, I'd rather just get this out of the way right now when it comes to the record. This record, technically speaking, ended when Noah Munoz fell on the falling shelves a little bit later, ending at 129, technically speaking. And I don't really think it matters that much, but it is notable to note. Oh, just in general, because of the way the show, builds it up and acts like it matters, even though it really doesn't. Out of this group, the two winners will obviously Noah Munio with a 3-0 win ratio, and then Emil Malik with a 2-1 win ratio. Obviously, the two people who will kind of poised to win this grouping. This leads to the final grouping, Group 14, which had Josiah Papel, Tate Becker, Luke Lowell, Lisa, Nikki, and Matt Domingo. Aside from Luke, we definitely had some star-studded athletes here as well. Yeah, I think it was very tough to pick favorites on this one because obviously we wanted Josiah and Matt to move on, but there was also the fact that Tate Becker was also in here too, and he was one of the top rookies from this season. So it definitely was an interesting battle to see if he were to move on as well. Yeah, is it an interesting matchup to go into here, or are we just gonna go into it? I do remember Josiah Papel having an interesting segment, but my memory of it is very tame because I watched these episodes once each, and it was a really long time ago too, a couple weeks ago. And plus, life kind of gets in the way, so my actual recallance of Ninja Warrior is kind of tight right now. I'm kind of just looking at this and being like, oh yeah, wait, that's what happened. I can totally see that. I mean, we haven't really been in the ninja space as of late either, so that's a thing as well. Yeah, the two winners were Matt Domingo and Josiah Papel. Obviously, the two veterans here. Josiah Papel being the top veteran in this group, 3-0 win ratio, and then Matt Domingo having a 2-1 win ratio. And that leads us into the final 32. At least that's how the show calls it. But it really is just the top 32 of the year. And you can also call this the knockout stage, where the competitors really started to get cracked down. This is finally when it became a single elimination, and people were knocked out the moment they lost the race. And yes, I do think this was really interesting. I think in terms of episodes 12 and 13, when we focus on these specific matchups in the top 32, and I mean starting off in the top 32, these matchups really meant something. It was really tough to actually pick favorites. Really need to know who was actually going to move on. Who did we want to move on? That was a really big thing here for sure. Yeah, definitely. Pretty tight if you ask me. Just seeing all the matchups in the top 32, it meant something seeing some of these competitors get knocked out, for sure. Yeah, we are going down the list. We're going to go in order of how Ninja Wiki handles it, where it shows this horizontal view of the spread. This was not the order they covered it in the show. I will note this right now. But what was at least nice is that they at least this time around, poured their focus on a specific side of the grouping in terms of the top 32, meaning that we could actually follow what the fuck was going on, and we actually knew who was knocked out, who was still in. It was a lot more straightforward, and like we said earlier, it would have been nice if this was how it was from the start. But even then, it still made these top 32 rounds and forward actually do kind of mean something in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, definitely. Starting with the first matchup, Kai Beckstrand versus Isabella Folsom. Now, I think this was really obvious who was going to win, but I think it brings up a really interesting topic when it comes down to the women on this course. Yeah, I actually do want to bring up the other matchup that had a female in here just to knock it out of the break. We had Isaiah Thomas versus Taylor Green. In both these cases, I would definitely say that the female competitors were the underdogs, but specifically with Isaiah Thomas and Taylor Green, I was very much sure that both the females here would put up more of a fight for these matchups, especially since they had done these courses a couple times each, and Taylor Green had Ninja Junior experience. Why the fuck was she so fucking slow in this matchup? That's what I want to know. What, did she not think she could beat Isaiah? We've known in the past that people like Taylor Green have felt like the underdogs in competitions like Ninja Junior, but she was able to hang with like some of the best. Like, do you guys not remember the fact that Taylor Green made it to the final four or in ANW Junior Season 3, and not to mention that she hung with Jackson Erdos, who went on to be the champion. Like, she literally almost beat him in that matchup. She honestly could have won the entire division if things were spun the right way. Like, that entire situation for NWP Junior Season 3 makes it seem so unbelievable that things went the way they did. Just the fact that Green wasn't able to put up a good fight against Isaiah Thomas. And I was also expecting Folsom to put up a good fight against Kai Beckstrand. Yes, Kai Beckstrand was obviously going to win, and I will say he was preferenced to be the champion of the season. Always one of the people I could definitely see winning the entire thing. But the thing is, I was so expecting Isabella Folsom to put more of a fight. Yeah, there's definitely some wiggle room there for sure. I do think it was a huge surprise seeing Taylor Green, just go so slow in the beginning here. And that was the last we saw with women, as the men won those matchups and ended up moving on. It's just kind of tight. Yeah, definitely for sure. Definitely for sure. I think it is a little weird saying goodbye to the women here. I think it is a little weird that they even moved on in the first place, considering how they had to do it, but I feel like there was more of a chance for some of them than others. Oh, hell yeah. Definitely for sure. For sure, it's kind of tough to, weigh them. Especially for someone like me. I am always cheering for the women. So, seeing them get knocked out like this and having them, totally feel like not even having a chance at even going all that far in this competition. We knew it at some point they'd get, totally outnumbered by the men and the teenagers specifically. But I think we all thought they had more of a chance than this. Yeah, I mean, just in general, just talk about Isabella Folsom and Taylor Green as competitors. They are at the top of the sport when it comes down to the women. And I will absolutely make an argument for Taylor Green being, the top woman right now. Despite what the show wants you to believe with, Addie Herman and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I would argue Herman's been very sloppy as of recently. So Green really did take that spot until as a top female veteran going into the current era of ANW, and especially considering her performance in ANW Junior as well. So, yeah, there's definitely some wiggle room there for sure. Yeah, moving on to the next matchup, we have David Bergstrom White versus NASA Gallimore, where NASA ended up getting knocked out as he fell in the swinging flames. This was a thing that happened. Yeah, but yes, it was a thing. But I was literally cheering at the screen when it happened. You were cheering? I was fucking cheering. I was actually really happy that NASA fell, just for the fact that it led to a very unpredictability of Bergstrom actually, moving on. And, I thought that was really interesting, seeing NASA go down here and not much later, because we know he was a top contender for the end of this. Huh. I think it's an interesting way to look at it. Were you literally, actually celebrating? I clearly remember screaming yes at the TV when I saw NASA fall, which is not usual for me. It's not usual for me to hate a competitor that much. I don't hate NASA as, a competitor, but it's just, allow the unpredictability to really sink in. I was not expecting David Bergstrom White to win, so seeing him win kind of made me a little happy. That's what I'm gonna say here. Okay, then. Moving on to the next matchup, we have Luke Beckstrand versus Jason Balins. Luke Beckstrand ended up winning this one. I don't think there was much more to it. Yeah, not really. I think the real matchup we have to talk about here was the other one that came up way after this. Caden Forshaw versus Joe Mawaski. Yeah, here we had a double fall, where we had Forshaw fall in the Salmon Ladder, which was a pretty surprising end to his season. I think even this deep in the competition, you can call this a shocking fail, because we were totally expecting him to be the one to move on. But more than that, seeing Joe Mawaski move on from here is nice. At least he wasn't knocked out in the top 32. He was actually able to move on, being one of the last veterans to still be in the competition at that point. But he also fell into fully monkey bars soon after, so it really felt kind of lucky that what happened for Milwaukee in Milwaukee's case. Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think it is very sad to say goodbye to Foreshadow on this point, though. Yeah, like we said before, he was kind of the person expected to win, so seeing him go out here was kind of a stretch in my opinion, for sure. Yeah, I was personally pushing for Foreshadow to being the winner here. So I'm Milwaukee fans, but like that was my verdict. Yeah, I feel like that was all our verdicts. Actually, I don't really think we're being all that controversial. Milwaukee is definitely way out of his league here, and we can start talk about that more a little later. Yeah, moving on, we had Enzo D. Wilson versus Ben Balins. This matchup definitely felt very climactic, and I think it was the closest out of all of the matchups here in the top 30 matchups here in the finals, where it was really neck and neck throughout, and it was a buzzer beater as well, the final one that we ended up seeing before the show ended, obviously. This was really tight. Yeah. Ben Balin just barely ended up coming away with the win, and Enzo Wilson ended up missing and falling. And then we had the next matchup, Jay Lewis versus Grant Cunningham. Yeah, I just want to say that, like, saying goodbye to Enzo Wilson is a little weird too, but, you know, I definitely thought he was going to be the winner here over Ben, but I think it's cool that Ben gets some starship. Like, he's actually able to rise against, you know, getting into the top 16 of the season is definitely an accomplishment after his previous season in season 15. Oh, hell yeah. Like, he's not really someone I ever really looked out for, so that's a really good accomplishment for him. Yeah, going into the Jay Lewis versus Grant Cunningham matchup, this was Jay Lewis by a long shot. Next matchup was Max Feinberg versus Elijah Browning. Yeah, this one was one of the closer matchups for sure. We had two really even ninjas from similar eras of the show. Both of them being part of the first line of teenagers. So the race was actually quite close. It was neck and neck all throughout, but Elijah Browning trying to pull out with the lead, ended up falling on the final obstacle, leading to Max Feinberg being able to gain the win. Yeah, definitely kind of a surprise. I thought Browning was going to be the one to move on here, but it really was kind of tight here. Yeah, after that was the Isaiah Thomas versus Taylor Green matchup, and then we had Hans Hertz versus Sam Folson. This one was quite cool to see. It being a rematch from last episode, I believe. Yeah, we saw those collide during the groups matchup. Now we have them re-colliding here, which is pretty cool. Sam Folson ended up coming away with the win. Then we had Evan LaValle versus Amir Malik, or Evan ended up coming away with the win. Then we had Caden Lebsack versus Luke Dillon, where Caden ended up coming away with the win. We had Jackson Odos versus Christian Hart. This matchup, honestly, probably the only actual segment I really actually have a clear memory of. I think it is actually a good combination here. We have Jackson Odos talking about him having a depression, and him being one of the few ninjas we actually can give a shit about. Yeah, definitely for sure. And no offense to other ninjas, it's just the fact that Odas is someone we were cheering for, and just to hear that's why he missed out on season 15 and 16. It's honestly something I can personally relate to, but just in general, it's interesting. It really was the only time in the episodes where a segment really, you know, grabbed your nuts and made you actually, like, interested. So, yeah, honestly, it worked. Yeah, then we had probably one of the most shocking matchups, Evan White versus Daniel Gill. Well, Evan White knocked out Daniel Gill. Yeah, this was kind of a surprise. I was so sure Gill was going to be the one to move on, but White ended up being the one to clear faster, and then Gill ended up falling soon after as well. Honestly, it is so sad to say goodbye to someone like Gill here. Yeah, he really was given the short end of the stick this entire season. Aside from his one segment in the finals, it really didn't feel like they cared much for him during this season. Not really. I get that he didn't win, but I feel like someone like him, a top veteran, should get more spotlight for sure. Yeah, moving on from that, we had Noah Munio versus Austin Balin. Owen would know the coming away with the win. And then we had the final set of matchups, Matt Domingo versus Caleb Bergstrom, where Matt Domingo to come away with the win, eliminating Caleb Bergstrom. A little unfortunate, but I think it's honestly fine. Then we had a pretty climactic matchup here for the final, Josiah Papel versus RJ Roman. Yeah, of course, two very top veterans, both of them we'd honestly expect to win. We are definitely picking favorites for some of these matchups, especially this one. Josiah L ended up losing, RJ Rowan coming away with the win, and that allows us to finally move on to the top 16, where we can finally start talking about some obstacles, and actually start talking about what are the biggest problems when it comes to these finals. The lack of balance between arms and legs. Fuck yeah. First off, we forgot to mention the clacker. Well, I guess you're kind of right on that. The clacker was actually swapped out once we got into the top 32. It was a modified version of the clacker where it was much smaller. Very similar to how it appeared in Season 10, the last time we saw it. But it was generally just more smaller, a little more oriented for a racing format. But it was also given the drop from Piston Plunge, was literally just the same piece, meaning it just left it there to make the obstacle a little bit harder. I don't really think it was really that necessary, but I guess it was fine. Yeah, I mean, I think the clacker itself was a fun obstacle to see in this racing format. Yeah, it kind of was, because, like, I think it really does emphasize the purpose of the obstacle, just clack on, clack off. Like, it actually does feel like a climactic obstacle to finish off with, especially in comparison to Piston Plunge. Yeah, definitely. Going into the round of 16, we had 2 more obstacles added for a total of an 8 obstacle course was for the finals. We had the kickboards, which is honestly an awful choice by none. This obstacle is so zigzag. You have to get yourself so twisty, Tony. Why the fuck was this designed like this? Like, if you're gonna do a racing format, don't copy an obstacles blueprint, part for part. This obstacle definitely needed a little bit of a restructuring. I feel like they could have done something where they made you kick one board on board, have to catch it, and then kick a second board, catch it, and then you move on, instead of having you do this whole middle twisty turny thing and flipping on with the trapeze. The obstacle really was just too big for a racing course. Yeah, and then we had the falling shelves, which is a really weird end to this course in my opinion. Yeah, definitely, for sure. It definitely, I don't think the falling shelves is a, bad ending, it's just a little weird. But it definitely brings up the point we just mentioned about, it feeling very lopsided. Competitors really lopsided. The only obstacle that even uses your legs, period, here are the shrinking steps. Everything else is all arms. Honestly, no wonder people couldn't speed through this. Only way the people who train strictly upper body and speed could even have a chance on these courses. Honestly, it makes sense why the races that were on the 8 obstacle course weren't as climactic as the previous. Yeah, there was just too much in between. There was too much arms. Even stage 3 doesn't feel like this all that much. I mean, yeah, it does feel like a fast stage 3. Like, it actually kind of brings me back to, like, Season 10 Stage 2, where, they tried to force a speed course out of a ton of upper body obstacles that take for fucking ever. And it's a little even more of a problem here because of because of the fact this is a race. Like, Jesus, we should not have people waiting on each other or trying to rest between obstacles or whatnot. Or, slogging their way through or something. We should have these competitors going pop, pop, back and forth, neck and neck. This entire episode should have felt so clear, but felt so close. But the moment we got out of the top 32 into the top 16, and these 2 obstacles were introduced, it just became too much for a lot of ninjas. And even for that final matchup, it definitely made a difference. Yeah, definitely. I think a good point I can make about all these obstacles is the fact that they feel okay for a racing course minus kickboards in isolation with other obstacles like a balance obstacle or something, but because they're all snapped together like this, it just doesn't work. Yeah, definitely. If just one of these obstacles was here, then fine, I feel like an obstacle like the Samurai can help balance it out as well. But you're dealing with so many obstacles that work the same kinds of muscles, that look almost the same. Kickboards are slow. Then we have obstacles like the kickboards that are very sluggish. Folding monkey bars that we mentioned last time has a lot of precision involved. We are also missing the obstacles from Obstacle 2, where we never see the Devil Steps after the qualifiers, and we also never see the Pole Grasp after the qualifiers, and that feels a little weird. It was a little weird. I mean, honestly, someone could probably just cut off their own legs and they could do this course for the most part. I mean, aside from landing on the landing pads using the trampolines, you're totally probably right. Just starting on obstacle 2, you really can just do it with all your arms. And that doesn't really bode well for a racing format. Yeah, it goes to further ham-fist my point I made back in that video and last time as well. If you need to keep these courses balanced. Like, the reason why the 10 obstacle courses in Ninja vs. Ninja were able to work and people would only get gassed out if they went too fast was because it was more equal. We had plenty of balance and upper body obstacles. In addition to that, we also had some obstacles that used both kinds of muscles. An example being both the parallel pipes and the zigzag climb that use all the different muscles. Here, it's just arms, and that kind of just leaves a lot of wiggle room for the legs that don't get to do much. I mean, no wonder no one could go fast on these courses. Honestly, no wonder. Yeah, for sure. Going into the matchups, we had Kai Beckstrand versus David Bergstrom White first. This one was actually surprisingly close. Like, I was so sure that David White would lose almost immediately. And while yes, he still lost, he put up a pretty decent fight against Kai. Yeah, definitely for sure. He was still, like, behind, but he's still, like... Again, he kept up with Kai as best he really can. But Kai really was a beast throughout this season, throughout this episode, so there really was no catching him. Then we had the other Beckstrand, Luke, going against Joe Mawaski. And this is where Joe Mawaski ended up having his final loss. And I think this really does go to a topic that I want to make an entire solo discussion video about. Just how ANW in this course in general really has alienated all the veterans who have made it to this point. Like, they aren't built for this course. In addition to that, it's just not fair for them. There's no way that on a course like this, Mawaski's going to beat someone like Luke Beckstrand. But if it was on a more even course, then we might actually have a conversation here. That's actually a pretty good point, actually. Like, I will actually give you that. If I end up making that video, which I think I will, but it'll be much further down the line, there's definitely more detail to go into. But essentially speaking, just the way these courses are designed and the way the format is of ANW seasons as of now and everything, it really does alienate the veterans who are still competing at this point. Yeah, we're definitely waiting until we head for season 18, where even less of them are going to compete at this point. I mean, Joe Mawaski won't compete. And speaking of which, Joe Mawaski's retirement. I don't even really know how to start this, man. I mean, I think we said a lot of things during the last podcast for season 16 when we talked about Mawaski's fail on stage 3. I mean, that really did feel like his last stand. It really does feel like he's competing for absolutely no reason at this point, as we mentioned last time very briefly. Like, he competed to ascend Mount Midoriyama, him more than anyone. And his loss during season 16 meant a lot. So to see him have to downgrade himself to go with this less competitive, less worth it prize where he really is fighting for himself, again, it feels like there's little reason to it because of how different it is compared to previous. It doesn't even really feel like all that climactic of a goodbye for Mawaski. Like, I will honestly say that last season, Mawaski's end felt way more climactic than this. Just going into, like, this matchup between Luke Beckstrand and Joe Mawaski, him, like, not being able to keep up with Luke Beckstrand, but trying to force it, and him coming out the following shelves, and just, it's like, coming up short, and he's just being like, oh, come on, like, there's no way he can generate that kind of momentum with, like, Little West, and just how dominant the arms are here, like we've said. And it really does feel like him tossing up his arms and just being like, you know what, fucking have it. Like, it really does feel like ultimate frustration with the show, where, like, people like him just can't compete with these young guns. Well, back then, when the teenagers first existed, the veterans were still in conversation, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people who are, like, in their late 30s are now out of range to win? Like, what the fuck is this stuff? I mean, we'll get to it in a little bit later, but RJ Roman is the last remaining veteran who made it past this point. And it is so weird for that to be the case, Ace. It is so weird. Like, we can talk about it a little bit later, but just the way this serves to of the A1A's competitors, despite the fact that some of these ninjas, like Milwaukee's not even 40 yet. Some of these people aren't as old as the ANW's format and just ANW in general makes you kind of think they are. Yes, Milwaukee has kids, but he's not that old. Like, think about someone like Travis Rosen, who was able to compete with the big guns until age 44, and he really was, like, a top competitor. Jeff Britton is Joe Milwaukee's age at this point, and he obviously won a Condon Seha. On a course like this, he would have had no chance. Had no chance. Even with his strength, yeah, he can do it, but not at this pace. I really don't think so, personally. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big argument there, for sure. Yeah, I think if I keep on talking, though, we'd be jumping into the territory that I would talk about for that video. Yeah, definitely for sure, so. Yeah, Joe Milwaukee retired, and Luke Beckstrand moving on. We have to talk about Luke Beckstrand's save on the falling shelves, too, just even briefly. Yeah, this isn't even on the level like Sean Bryan's save from last season. You know, where one hand popped off, he had to latch the other one back on. This was legitimately Kai Beckstrand just fucking missed, but he still was able to land it and still finish the course. Like, he would have won no matter what happened, but just the way that looked, kind of crazy if you ask me. Yeah, definitely. Even just, yeah, just a little bit there. After that we had Ben Balance versus Jay Lewis. Honestly, probably the matchup here that I cared the least about because I wanted Jay Lewis to win and that's what happened, so it really didn't really matter how it went. Yeah, I do feel like Ben Balance is definitely the underdog here, and he was definitely outmatched just because of how much bigger this course was. It really did feel like he wasn't really ready for something this big, just because of the way he wasn't able to keep up with Jay. Then we have Max Feinberg versus Isaiah Thomas, which was an easy win for Isaiah. Yeah, definitely for sure. I don't think there's much more to note there, but it definitely was an easy win. Then we had Sam Folson versus Evan Lavawi. This was super tight. Sam Folson ended up beating Evan Lavawi. Evan Lavawi being the furthest rookie, I believe. I believe he's the only rookie left at this point. And, he, lost at the top 16. I think he was definitely someone you could definitely root for going into this, though. Oh, yeah, it's like an underdog coming away with the win? Fuck yeah. I could definitely say that Evan Lavawi was someone I could, like, see coming away with a win. I mean, if Forshaw was going to get knocked out, Lavawi was the next person I was going to go to in terms of cheering, in terms of the rookies. Then we had a really tight matchup between Caden Lebsek and Jackson Odos. I mean, two previous top Ninja Junior competitors, and even top competitors when it comes down to the show. I mean, Odos and Lebsek have gone very similar places in the sport. Yeah, definitely for sure. Even not considering NWP Junior, like, both of them have made it to stage 2 before. And I would argue both of them are very top speed dogs in general, so this was pretty tight. Yeah, Kane ended up coming in with the win, mostly just because of a little bit more of efficiency. But this was still quite close. An interesting exit for Jackson Odos. Like, it kind of sucks to say goodbye to him. He was definitely the person I was cheering for a little more than Caden, but it's still cool to see Caden move on. And this was quite the climactic matchup. I think this is when you really start to see how tight things are. We're like, you know, you really have to be picking favorites, but these are two people we definitely wanted to see win. So, you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's what that matchup really did feel like. Yeah, definitely for sure. Then we get Evan White versus Noah Munio, and Noah Munio obviously coming away with the win. But this was the point to where Noah Munio lost his streak, as we previously mentioned, where he fell on the falling shelves. But Evan had already fallen to that point, so he still had the win regardless. Then we had the final matchup here, Mac Domingo versus RJ Roman, RJ coming away with the win, but it was pretty close. And then we come down to the quarterfinals in the final 8. And let's talk about this. Sam Folson and RJ Roman getting knocked out here. The final 2 veterans in the competition who were never teenagers. Yeah, technically speaking, Folson was 18 when he started ANW, so there's a little bit of a discrepancy there, but I would still count him as a non-teenager because he was technically an adult at this point, and he still definitely felt like an elder statesman, even if he's only like 23. And then there's RJ Roman, who's only 29, but is the oldest person left standing at this point, and obviously the last person to still be considered a veteran over all these teenagers. I would definitely consider him that. Again, just another situation where ANW just feels like it's alienating its veterans, just considering this point. I mean, yeah, when it feels like they're alienating someone who's only 23, that's definitely a discussion to have for sure. I mean, Sam Folson, he definitely had a shot at winning, but he definitely had to fight to stay in the competition for sure. Yeah, I mean, he had to face up against two of his best friends, and he's put in a really interesting position going against Kane Lepsek and then losing. Yeah, RJ Roman lost against Noah Munia. And then we had the other two matchups. Two pretty tight matchups as well. We had Jay Lewis versus Isaiah Thomas. Probably the least climactic out of them all. If I had to be honest. But it was still tough to pick favorites between Jay and Isaiah. I mean, these are two very top veterans. Again, you kind of wish both of them could win. Yeah, then we had Kai and Luke Beckstrom going head-to-head, and we set this back into semis. We really wanted to see them go head-to-head, and it's very cool to see them go head-to-head. It definitely meant something. I will argue this did feel kind of climactic, but obviously Kai had the better technique, and it is really interesting to see this matchup again, like rewatching it. Yeah, definitely for sure. I mean, going into this, we really didn't know which brother was really considered better. So seeing Kai just barely edge out Luke in this case, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Yeah, then going into the top four, Kai Beckstrom versus Isaiah Thomas, with Isaiah falling very early on the Swinging Flames. This was unfortunate to say the least. Yeah, just seeing Kai Beckstrom handle the win this late in the game kind of sucks. Sucks for sure, but the kind of risk you have to take on a course like this really makes it feel that easy to lose a competitor like that. It kind of just makes sense. Yeah, definitely for sure. Then we had Caden Lebsek versus Noah Munia. This was pretty tight on a basic level, but it definitely wasn't as special as previous matchups. It was really close. These people are definitely known for speed, so they definitely contested each other. I would argue that Noah and Caden are very equal in terms of speed level, in terms of skill level, so there definitely was a lot to debate here. Caden ended up losing, while Noah ended up winning, but again, it was quite close till the very end. And then that leads us to the final matchup, Kai Beckstrom versus Noah Munia, which honestly comes at a huge cost. Yeah, I have a whole video planned and at the moment, but I think it's already come out at this point. By the time you guys see this, I think it will have come out. It's called Kai Beckstrom versus Noah Munia, the matchup that meant nothing. It's kind of an idea I had because I really didn't feel much going into this matchup, and even after it, like, I didn't care that Kai won. Furthermore, I found it hard to even root for Noah in this case either. It really didn't feel like much for both these ninjas, and it made this matchup not feel like much. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to go on from there. There's definitely a lot of factors to go into it. I think a topic that you probably won't get to talk about is just like the impact when it comes down to the off season and Noah Munia and Kai Beckstrom like after winning. Yeah, I feel like that video will kind of just end with, you know, Kai being the winner. There wasn't really much more to go on about when it comes to the video's topic on that one. It's more about the competitors themselves than the matchup. I will tell you that right now, if you guys haven't seen that video, but I'm pretty sure it'll be out before this. If it's not, well, it's probably pretty close to coming out anyway. But regardless, yeah, let's start with Noah Munia. You know, coming second place of the season, and technically speaking, improving over how he did in seasons 15 and 16, where he placed third. I don't really think there's much more to it, but just seeing him fall on the falling shelves is kind of surprising, I will say that. Yeah, it definitely creates a very interesting debate where, you know, Noah was obviously a top veteran going into the season, ignoring that record. Even so, like, 2 back-to-back stage 4s is really good, and he almost constant during season 16, like, that's still pretty tight. It definitely isn't surprised that he got into the top 2, but it's still, like, a little weird. I don't know. Yeah, and then there's Kai Beckstrom, who this season doesn't even feel like as climactic as season 12 felt. And I'm really trying to understand why. Because I still had a very similar format. But I felt like I cared for a matchup between Austin Gray and Daniel Gill. But I couldn't care for a matchup between Kai Beckstrom and Noah Munia. Even if both are titans in the sport. Yeah, I mean, if you want to compare those two matchups in terms of climaxes to lesser seasons in terms of format, I guess season 12 had more of an excuse because of the pandemic, but you also have to think about the preference of Gray had only competing for a couple seasons and he was on a comeback season as well. And this was really his first breakout season. Gil was coming off of season 11 where he was, technically because of what happened with Drew, because they're the last ninja standing. And then coming off here, we have two people who were in the final five for season 16 going head to head. So it should have been climactic. So I think that's something that I think that's a question that we could definitely leave up to debate for now, and then you can answer later on in your big video. I don't really think I'm gonna bring up a comparison between those two matchups, but still, like, trying to understand why I didn't care for this matchup all that much, I think that's really interesting. I do think, though, it's still a huge accomplishment for Kai to become a champion of ANW. Even if it's not a Cotton Seha, this is still very impressive for him, and obviously still feels like the culmination of his ninja career. Yeah, him a little more so. I mean, he was in ANW Junior, he won Season 1, and came very close to winning Season 2, so there's a lot to it. Kai Beckstrand's also just a top veteran in general, so, like, him winning, it doesn't really mean, it definitely just kind of just makes sense, you know? Yeah, he was definitely someone who was very easy to cheer for going into this. I don't really think I wanted to cheer for him, but as he continued to dominate, I kind of felt like I had to. But still, it's just tight. Yeah. So, that's it for the finals. And, how do you want to approach this? You want to talk about the episode as a whole, the season as a whole? Like, how are we going with this? Yeah, so let's go into the episodes themselves. I would call episode 12 probably the best episode of the season. It was pretty good. It felt really climactic. It felt really cinematic and climactic. Just seeing competitors, all in one going out, that really made that episode very entertaining, and I was really at the edge of my seat all throughout it. Yeah, episode 13 wasn't awful, I will definitely say, but it's still, it's very low standard for an AEW finale, no doubt. Yeah, we mentioned it earlier, but, like, I would definitely call this one of the last AEW finales. Like, I don't know where we're gonna put it in terms of, like, ranking, but, like, it just in terms of putting everything up there, this is definitely a lower stakes finale, and definitely suffers because of that, just in general. Especially just putting it up against all the other finales in AEW's history. Like, even so, like, there's still, like, a lot that's not here, that was here in those episodes, but isn't really here in this finale. And yeah, part of it is because of the format, but just in general, it just doesn't feel like the end of the season. It's just race after race, and then we're done. Like, it doesn't even really, it just feels like too much, It's not like ANW Junior or Team Ninja, where it feels more bite-sized. This is like, just race after race until we're done. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Okay, well, I think that puts us in a pretty good position. What about ANW 17 as a whole? What you guys think? What are some general thoughts? Ah, Jesus, I mean, where are we even going with this? I'm trying to figure out if I don't like this season more than, like, season 15 or something. I would argue, personally, this felt better than season 15, but the format changes don't help much. Yeah, I mean, those seasons are really fighting on very equal ground, just being honest here. So, yeah, definitely for sure. In terms of, like, a waking up this season, I mean, it's not an awful season by any stretch of the demeanor, but it's still, like, not good. I wouldn't really call many episodes of this season really good. I don't think an episode of the season got past maybe a 7 out of 10 for me, personally. Oh, yeah, definitely up there. Like, 7, I think 7's a pretty good number to, like, utilize in this case. Yeah, especially coming off of, like, season 16, how good of a season that was, surprisingly. I can't say this season really had a chance to be better than season 16, but it might have still been better than a lot of AEW seasons in general if it just had better pacing, I guess it's a word to use, right? I would definitely use that word. Because, like, yeah, I really do feel like the build of the finals was a slogfest, and the finals themselves being all mixed up was not helping things in the slightest. Yeah, I mean, we are talking about a case where the qualifiers weren't bad, but we also weren't really entertained by them. We talked about how the semifinals felt really boring, aside from a few standouts. And then the finals, them being scattered, it just doesn't look the way it should have. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I guess that's the verdict on the season. It's pretty okay, at best. There wasn't really a good point in this season. I think you have full permission to kind of skip it if you guys want to, but I mean, you've seen us cover the entire season, so I think it's kind of a pointless verdict to come up with at this point. Yeah, kind of, actually. But, yeah, that calls it. That's it for this episode of the NWP Podcast, and that's it for ANW 17 as a whole, and just a coverage on it. Yeah, going into the ending here, I want to address a couple things when it goes to moving forward with the channel now that we're in the ANW off season. I first want to address the women's championship that aired the week after the finale, so I think it's like 2 weeks ago at this point. I have not seen it, and for the first time ever in Ninja Warrior history in a very long time, I am just straight up not interested in an episode of Ninja. I have no care in the world who won this year's women's competition. And I don't know if it's just because these courses aren't designed with the women in mind, so I don't really feel like much is going to be very climactic. But I just can't find myself caring for it, personally. Yeah, I mean, I watched it because I like the women. I mean, and they didn't really get much showtime during the finals, so I watched it. But I get what you're saying. Like, I don't really think it was that... I could be saying, like, it's just more of the same. So, what do you want us to talk about? Yeah, I mean, and plus, like, what the fuck does the women's championship mean anymore? Like, because, you know, now because the women can't even have a chance to go far at all, it's just like us to forcibly crown a female winner. Like, what the heck? Yeah, it's definitely a good way to put it. But, yeah, so we're not going to be doing a podcast episode on that. One thing episode on that. Going into the future, obviously there was no Stage 5 Ninja Awards this year. I do think, though, there will be a little bit of a discussion on that topic, though, in ANW 17 in general, just talking about what would have won some of the categories, because some categories could easily have gone on for this season. So, I guess, like, talk about, like just, like, winners and runner-ups, like, who we would have actually had given the win to if we had done it this year. Might be a good preliminary discussion to topic, so that might be in next episode, but there's going to be like no big awards thing. I think last year definitely showed that we don't really need to. In addition to that, again, a lot of the things that go into Stage 5 Ninja just don't apply for this season, so it kind of just doesn't make any sense like we've said in the past. So yeah, that's that. In terms of the future episodes of the podcast, we still have the Team Ninja video, which is currently being edited. That'll probably come out really soon if it's not already out. I kind of just realized that video could already be out at this point. Possibility. We'll see. I mean, I feel like the priority is to get the rest of the season finished, but that video might have actually come out before this one, so... if it's not out, then it's going to be pretty close, but if it is out, then, yeah, it's out. There's definitely still a lot of merit to those videos, so... I think College Madness will be coming really soon. Yeah, I will tell you that we kind of fell off of watching that season a little while ago, especially with all the life stuff that was happening with me. And with us having to watch the episode together as a group. The episodes together as a group definitely made it difficult. It's not a long season, so I feel like we can probably just finish the final 2 episodes we have to watch. And, you know, easily just call it there and make the episode. But you're still going to need to give us a little bit of time on that. In terms of stuff we actually will be talking about, there is Sasuke 43, but no word of a new Sasuke World Cup as far as I know, so, I mean, if there was a new World Cup coming up here, we will talk about it. There's no word of it right now. Sasuke 43, you know, that has, Sasuke 43, I think that filmed just recently, don't quote me on that, but I think it either has filmed or is filming soon. Either way, we will cover it once it airs, but that's like months away. I think it sounds like immediate coverage after ANW 17. It depends on when this comes out for sure, but if this is able to get out by like the end of October, let's say, hopefully, then maybe then maybe we'll just try to do some things to like help wrap up this year's coverage of ANW. Like you said, just doing a preliminary discussion on the Series Ninja Awards and what they would have looked like if we did do them this season is an interesting topic. There's also a huge topic on like season 18 and what to talk about there. If we're even gonna cover season 18 is kind of up in the air right now too. Yeah, I feel like we'll know that as we keep on going. Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the call for the season, so that's also, we kind of got confirmation just recently that it's filming in a couple days, so I'm not getting my call, unfortunately. Let alone me actually being able to fly over to Las Vegas. I mean, you would have figured it out. I definitely would, yeah, definitely for sure, but still. It's just the point. But, yeah, I mean, I don't really think I have much more to say. I can't really say I know exactly what we're going to be doing after this. I know there's going to be a lot of solo discussion videos, but when it comes down to the podcasts, I wish I was sure where we were gonna go from here, cause I'd still like to keep this going, but sometimes it might just be more difficult to find topics for us to cover. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely still the Team Ninja stuff. If nothing else, that will be our priority going forward. But those episodes take a lot because the seasons are long, and we want to do a full rewatch of each season before we cover it. So I feel like it's more of a long-term project versus a short-term project. Yeah, I think you guys would just have to see. At the time we're recording, it's kind of just tough to like project the future that far when like there's still 2 episodes of the podcast that haven't come out yet, and we don't know which solo discussion videos are out now. We just don't really know what is out to you guys to see, and we're kind of just gonna have to see how that evens out in the coming days. So I think that will determine what's coming up next for you guys. Yeah. So with that, we'll see you guys next time for maybe College Madness. But honestly, I think you guys just have to see. I will tell you this though, I don't think we're going to be going on hiatus after this season's coverage like we usually do. We already had a huge hiatus during the middle of the season, so I feel kind of weird if we would have hopped back on hiatus after just a couple episodes. So I think it would kind of just be a mix of episodes of the podcast and solo discussion videos from here. There's still a whole bunch of, end of the year solo discussion videos that I want to make. So yeah, I feel like those videos are going to be a lot more common than podcast episodes from here, but there's still going to be like a couple podcast episodes. In terms of like channel coverage, those I don't really know like what the ratio will be, so like everything else, we'll just have to see. But we will see you guys next time. But either way, we'll see you guys next time. Yep, peace. But I always say peace. Well, I said it this time. Are we really having the same conversation that we keep on having, me and you and Lego Batman? Oh, totally. I guess, yeah, we had to debate totally on that. Okay, for real. We will see you guys next time. Next time for whatever comes up next. Peace. Oh, I see what you did there. Just let me end the episode, Questal! Fine. Peace. You piece of shit. Well, here we are. Whatever. See you guys next time. For real. Peace.